Hello again, college football fans. It is Sunday, November the 7th. Alabama defeated LSU yesterday 20-14 in the ugliest game that I've seen Alabama involved in since the Iron Bowl of 2019. Uh, what can I say that hasn't already been said? Obviously, Alabama has taken a step back this year. I said that in my very first video before they had played their first snap. You lose players like Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle and Mac Jones and Najee Harris and Landon Dickerson and guys like that on your lines, and you're just not going to be as good a unit the next year. I mean, that was an all-timer, great level of a unit. But obviously, they should have fared better against this LSU team. I mean, lame coach, horrible season, just been for lack of a better analogy, a dumpster fire. People like to talk about. So, this does not bode well for the championship aspirations and all that kind of stuff. But you can't win them every year. I'm not writing Alabama off. Obviously, they're still very much in the thick of things as much as anybody in the country right now. But if they keep playing like this, they're going to get nicked again before they even get to the SEC championship game. I mean, Arkansas and Auburn are certainly capable enough teams to beat the team that was on the field last night. The disturbing part, obviously, has got to be the running production. I mean, thank God for Bryce Young and Will Anderson. I mean, if anything happens to either one of those guys, then I am. You can go ahead and reserve your spot in the Citrus Bowl or wherever again for Alabama this year, because those guys are doing it on both sides of the ball. They're carrying their units on their shoulders, and both of them played great again yesterday. If Bryce Young had time, he probably would have had a better day. But the O-line, I know they had an injury and had to shuffle some guys around, but at this point in the season, that unit should be able to handle something like that better. I know LSU still has talent. I know they've, as far as a roster talent goes, LSU's probably definitely top 5 in the SEC. Probably top 3 actually, but that's neither here nor there. They've shown all season that they, have either given up or have faced attrition or coaching problems or whatever. But I mean, this team has lost to pretty bad teams. They've barely beaten bad teams, and there's just no reason for Alabama to have struggled this badly. I mean, if Alabama had wound up winning by 10, and kind of had to have a tense last few minutes in the fourth quarter to close things out, that would have been one thing. But I mean, it went down to the last play, and the drop. Cameron Latou drops the very first pass that Bryce Young threw at him. That's been a little theme that has cropped up in the middle of the season that just sort of came out of nowhere. I mean, I know Billingsley had some disciplinary problems or something early in the season, but the tight ends, which has been such a strength for our offense for the last 5 or 6 years at least, suddenly it's like it's just a weird, and there was some weird things in that game, and this happens in rivalry games, weird funny things, hitting the crossbar, missing an extra point, which definitely made things more tense than they needed to be, and that was definitely out of character for Will Reichert. But the good news is at least the defense was able to shut them down time and time again when they needed to. The bad news is it's a terribly coached, terribly run program right now, so you should be able to stonewall them anytime you wanted to. But Saban referred earlier in the season to outside factors really affecting this team, which is something that the best Nick Saban teams aren't affected, but this one certainly seems to be like, if there's not a number before the team that they're playing, if they're not ranked, I think they've proven that now. Last night definitely proves it against Texas A&M that they're not quite as sharp and not quite as up to the task as they would be if they are ranked or if they're coming off a loss or if they have something to prove. But in a game like this, when they're playing a team like LSU that all they've heard all year is how bad they are, and they weren't ranked, and they weren't they're low in the totem pole of the SEC Western standings. So this team, I suppose, I guess they just felt like they'd be able to roll out of bed and go beat LSU, and effectively that's what they did. So that's also good news. Alabama rolled out of bed and played with absolutely no passion or intensity, especially on the offensive side of the ball, and still managed to come away with a victory. So that's the good news, and they're still in it. But and this goes back to another problem that I've always had with the process and Nick Saban, and I feel like this is one of the reasons why his record against Auburn is not as good as you would think, because in rivalry games, emotion matters. That emotion definitely mattered on that LSU sideline last night, and Nick Saban does not like to have an emotionally amped up team. He likes an even keel. Doesn't matter who your opponent is, doesn't matter what the score is, and that works great. But a lot of times, if your process is going to get derailed, it's going to be in one of these rivalry type situations where a team that is not as talented and not as well coached and not as good a football team can ride their emotions to a victory, and maybe certain groups of guys through the years are better at maintaining that robotic nature that Saban obviously likes. But I don't know, every once in a while, maybe you need to adjust to the guys that you've got. And it seems like this year, these guys are definitely susceptible to outside factors. And so why not use that to your advantage? Why not play the revenge card? Why not talk about how Ed Ogeron said, fuck the Tide and all that kind of stuff? Why not use that to your advantage? And so, but that's not the way Saban does things, and he's won 7 national titles. So who am I to criticize what he's doing? But that I'm just saying that to point out that that's how these things happen. Now, moving forward in the season, obviously next week is a nothing game. At least they're not doing the thing that they used to do, where they play the Division II or Division I AA team the week before the rivalry games. I never liked that, and at least New Mexico State is a Division I team. I know that we got our FCS ridiculous patsy game out of the way early in the season. But this is a good game to get well on, obviously. The running game, I've never been a big fan of Brian Robinson, but you can't hang that on him last night, because he was getting met in as soon as he was getting the handoff by defenders. So you can't really blame the backs too much for that. Yeah, Najee Harris or Derrick Henry or somebody like that would have fared a little bit better, but not much. And they're definitely depleted in that department. So that's the really unsettling part of all of this. And if there was a reason if there was a factor that I would point to as to the reason why we wouldn't be able to beat Georgia in an SEC championship game, even if we're able to get there, that's it. Because obviously that defensive front seven, if we can't run on LSU, we're not going to be able to run on Georgia either. And in the championship situations like that, you have to be able to run the football. I'm just hoping that maybe the injury and the shuffling that they had to do was the main part of that. But if they don't get that fixed, then there's, like I said, you might as well reserve your hotels in Orlando, Bama fans, because or Atlanta for the Peach Bowl or some other nonsense that no one cares about in Tide country. But once again, gonna reiterate this fact: we're still 8-1, and very much everything is on the table and control our own destiny still, amazingly enough. And that's all I got to say about that game. Moving forward, I will have videos coming out about the SEC week and how those picks went, and they actually went a lot better than my pick for this particular game, which, like I said, I anticipated this being like one of those non-conference games, and it kind of felt like that. It kind of felt like that in years. I think back to like the Shula years. We had this game felt so much like a game against like Middle Tennessee or somebody that a Mike Shula team would have played. The only saving grace is that it was LSU, and we do know that they have NFL guys over there on that sideline. Not nearly as many as what we have, and very depleted in a very bad situation for them. But that's the only saving grace about that game last night. First of all, it was a win, and secondly, it was against at least a team with a name and an SEC school, and a team that we know recruits great talent. But we've got Apache next week to get healthy, and then we're gonna run into the Double A down the stretch. Very different. Never remember playing Arkansas this late in the season, but that's something to look forward to, as well as obviously the Iron Bowl, which I'm still not very comfortable with the situation going into that, but I'll talk more about that as we roll forward in this 2021 college football season. Thanks for watching.